Brought to you by Mint Mobile. Stay tuned for a special offer at the end of the show. Hi, and welcome to the Mobile Tech Podcast. I'm your host, Miriam Jouar, and today is Friday, June 6, 2025. And I've got the lovely Victoria Song here from The Verge. Hi, Victoria. How are you?
Hi, thanks for having me. I am very tired, very busy, but full of thoughts.
Fantastic. Thoughts is what we want on the show. And, I've been wanting to talk to you because I cover wearables quite extensively, and it's not my primary focus, but I do it, and you do that a ton. So I figured, who best can I have on? And also, you have that level of snark that I adore in your writing and your general social media presence. And, at the same time, that you have the snark, you also are in touch with what younger people are doing, which I'm totally not. Like, I don't know anything about memes. I'm totally clueless about that stuff. And so it's kind of fun to read your writing because of it, because I get both this they get the snark, but they also get the stuff that people care about these days that I don't necessarily get. And that's so cool.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I try. I'm firmly millennial, but I am on TikTok a lot, so I do I think of myself as a Jane Goodall observing the Gen Zers because they're an interesting bunch.
They're amazing. I love young people and what they're doing. I just don't get it half the time, and I feel so disconnected about it. Thankfully, you bridge the gap. And I think the other thing, is you just published this story yesterday, I think, on The Verge, and I didn't read it yet, but I just didn't understand any of it. I need to go dig into it. It seems fascinating, though. And
the cursed AI app one?
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And I was just like, wow, really? It's flying over my head. So anyway, that's on me, but I'll have to read it. And then most recently, you wrote some stuff about, we were both at Google I/O, so you wrote about the Android XR project. And I'm very excited about that. I wear glasses, so for me, it's no big deal to wear something that has some brains in it. And I'm looking forward to that. And then, of course, there's been that discussion. And last week, we did an entire show with Ray Wong almost on the future of AI devices, dedicated AI. It wasn't specifically on wearable ones, but dedicated AI devices. Should they exist? Because our phones are starting to get AI keys. This Moto phone we're going to discuss has an AI key. And you do really need it. When you already have the Swiss Army knife in your pocket. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on this open AI stuff that's been doing the rounds.
The IO / Joni Ive, Sam Altman. That week that we had Google I/O, that was a wild week in terms of just talking about AI and AI wearables and where everything is going. My beat is increasingly turning into an AI beat because fitness trackers, smartwatches, and increasingly just AI, they're just AI devices now, or at least that's how these big tech companies seem to be positioning them, which is kind of not a pivot I was expecting, but is one that I found myself in. It's fascinating, and I really do think it kind of started with Meta, with
the Ray-Ban,
the Ray-Bans, they were just this stealthy gadget that popped up out of nowhere at the end of 2023. And it was fascinating because, the Meta Ray-Ban glasses, that's not the first iteration of them, right? We had the Ray-Ban Stories, which everyone was like, okay, I guess these are glasses, whatever. And those kind of followed on the Snap Spectacles.
Yeah.
So, these smart glasses have been around for a while, so why are they taking off with the Meta Ray-Bans? And my thesis there is it's because the photo quality was finally something that you could post online. It no longer looked like it was filmed on a potato. So
do you also think that's because they look like Ray-Bans, so they're stylish on everyone? And I think the other thing too, I had Google Glass, I spent my own money on it and I loved it. And it just because a few people didn't have the right etiquette, it died. The technology, I think, needed to be developed further, and it didn't because it was a social faux pas to have them. And I think we're past that now. People have accepted the fact that cameras are ubiquitous. They're going to get recorded in public. It's going to happen. And at least Meta put a light on there. So at least that really helped. Google Glass didn't have that.
I think to an extent, yes, the fact that it looks like a form factor you would actually wear. Usually, when I talk about wearables, I have to tap the sign about the principles of good wearable design is that one, it has to be something that you would wear, and it has to be something that is comfortable to wear.
Oh, that's the other thing for
Which
sure.
yeah, and there are a lot of devices that just kind of violate those principles, and some of the devices that violate those principles don't look like they would violate it on the surface. Like, I think I wrote a story about this, and of course, it's just my opinion, but I feel like the Humane AI pin violated several tenets of good wearable design, and part of that is just the fact that it took this pin form factor, which is difficult for everyone to kind of wrap their heads around. Like, how many people do you know wear brooches?
Yeah.
Grandmas, right? Grandmas are wearing brooches, but the average person is not doing that. The Humane AI pin it's a heavy device. It was a very beautifully designed device, but it's heavy. If you wear a blouse that doesn't have a lot of structural integrity, can you actually wear it? No. And then if you looked at the Humane AI pins marketing materials, almost 9 out of 10 times it was shown on a piece of outerwear, like a jacket or a heavier material, like a sweater, something a little bit more durable. So if you really think about that, it was kind of one of those design flaws in the sense that not everyone is going to be wearing a piece of outerwear 24/7, 365. If you wear a t-shirt and it drags down on the t-shirt, that's kind of not great. And then I think once reviewers were starting to wear the device, David Pierce, he was saying that it was just very hot, and you don't want something that's hot on your person. Like,
Right.
overheating, that's a burn risk. It's just not something that's very comfortable. So like, when you think about that, the challenge with wearable devices is creating something that you want to wear, that is pleasant to wear, and is useful if it runs out of batteries anyway. So the Humane Pin's design, it failed a lot of those principles, and it's kind of why I think it was a flop. Outside of just the obvious, the latency, expensive,
The dedicated phone number, the lack
yes,
of
the
RCS support, la 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 la.
exactly.
Yeah.
Like, outside of that, just the hardware design itself, it's not lending itself to 24/7 wear, which is why it's very interesting that you have the Ray-Bans, right? I think one thing that Meta very keenly glommed onto was the fact that, Google Glass looked like it came from the future. But if you're trying to convince people in the now about a future technology, no one wants to really look like they come from the future. Not the average person, at least.
Yep.
Like, you have people who are very design forward. I love your glasses; they're a beautiful color of blue. But
I'm actually
not
wearing
everyone
my
is
old
into
glasses today. Usually I got my yellow ones on. I don't know why I pulled them out at some point and didn't put the other ones back.
But that's exactly to my point, though. Like, everyone has different design sensibilities. Some people are really comfortable wearing out their colors. I love wearing color, but I think I've gone to enough wearable events where I see a person go like, "Oh, no, just give it to me in black." So, you have a lot of different variety with that.
But that's true also of smartphones. You saw a lot of the flagships today are very muted colors. I mean, you can embellish them with a case or D-brand skin or whatever, but people are very conservative. I see that in cars too. I cover EVs, and it's not just EVs, but in cars in general, the colors available on lots and are very muted, and you pretty much have to custom order if you want like a red or something that pops. And when I go to get glasses for myself, I have like this favorite store of mine in the Mission that I go to in San Francisco, but it's like they're one of the few that carries colors and in bold colors. And I like bold colors on my glasses and bold shapes. And it's hard to find, like, as you saw, you probably been into an eyeglass store. It's like, lots of blacks and whites and grays. White's actually really hard to find, honestly, pure white. But yeah, you're right. This is totally how people are. And that's okay.
Yeah, I mean, there are brands that cater to that. Like, talking about Android XR, the fact is that they announced Gentle Monster was going to be one of the, and Gentle Monster is a very hip brand.
I can't wait for the fur.
Yeah, no, but like Gentle Monster is a South Korean brand, and it's very well known for having like bold silhouettes, interesting shapes and colors. So that was like a very interesting choice because it's like they announced Gentle, Monster, and Warby Parker. Warby Parker is going to be the one for quote unquote normies, people who want something a little stylish but versatile for everyday wear. Gentle Monster is a much more fashion forward brand. It's interesting that they chose to have both. Whereas, Facebook, oh wow, just showing my age, calling it Facebook. Meta is they went with EssilorLuxottica, and EssilorLuxottica is the biggest eyewear brand in the world. Ray-Ban is a very classic brand name, but there's rumors that there's going to be an Oakley branded version for athletes.
Makes sense.
They have a lot of limited edition pairings for the Meta Ray-Bans. I think there was one with like Ferrari at one point. So they're brands that are very versatile. The things that most people want is something that they don't have to buy multiple versions of for if you want to wear smart glasses to a wedding, you want something to be discreet. I don't know if you remember, but when the Vision Pro was new and the guy was posing on his wedding day wearing a Vision Pro, that versus say wearing Meta Ray-Bans at your wedding, one of them is going to be very obvious. The other is just going to be very subtle.
Yeah.
And to your point, yes, I do believe that people are much more, for better or worse, they're much more comfortable with the idea that you're being filmed in public places all the time, partly because of influencers, partly because vlogging.
It's a completely different landscape than when Google Glass came out, right?
It's a completely different, right. But at the same time, you do have people questioning, like, what do you do when you have these smart glasses in a bathroom where there is still a degree of privacy expected? Yeah. Once people learn how to spot these glasses in bathrooms, are you going to have the same problem? Maybe, right? So it's an interesting conversation to have because I don't think those privacy concerns have gone away. It's just what we expect is a private versus public space has maybe changed since 2013 when the Google Glass were new.
So where do you think we're going in terms of glasses? Like the ultimate to me is the glasses I'm wearing right now have cameras, have some, AI and are connected to the internet somehow, either via my phone or, because let's face it, we're still going to have phones. You still need a display from time to time that's a little bigger than what you could show in glasses. So I can see three scenarios here. Obviously, the current Meta Ray-Ban, which is just a camera-based system with an AI voice assistant built in, and that pairs with your phone. And then there is, kind of like the step up from that. It maybe has a single display, maybe has its own cellular connectivity eventually, but might still depend on the phone and has just basically like either monochrome or color, but very glanceable, simple notifications, stuff like we saw at I/O. And then, the full enchilada, right? Like something that looks like this has two displays. The displays have wide field of view, can potentially replace your smartphone, have cellular connectivity. Like, where do you think we're going to land, eventually? Because I feel like the one thing that, actually it was somebody at Digital Trends wrote this recently. And I thought it was very, very insightful. Not everyone wears glasses and not everybody wants to wear glasses. I love glasses. But his approach was like, no, many of us hate wearing glasses. But we have to. And so we wear contacts instead or whatever it might be. And I was like, oh, I never thought of that. Because, I've been wearing glasses since I'm 5 years old or 3 years old or something. And I've just kind of adopted that. Like I own it and I love it. And I will always wear glasses. I don't like contacts. But he made me realize, it was Andy Boxall. He made me realize like, hey, yeah, there's this big hurdle. In the same way as people don't want to wear a watch, right? So where do you think we're going to land because of that?
That's a thing that I talk about with David Pierce all the time because I'm like you. I have shit eyes. Like I'm wearing contacts right now, but my prescription is really strong. And David has 20/20 vision, so we argue about this all the time because he doesn't want to wear glasses all the time. He thinks sunglasses cool, fine. It makes sense as a form factor, but if he doesn't need to wear glasses, why should he? And I understand that. I am deeply empathetic to it. It's mostly one of those things where it has to really depend on the killer app. And these companies seem to think that AI is the killer app, that having the assistant on you at all times, that a glasses form factor kind of adds in augmented reality or XR or whatever you want to call it these days to that, and they think that's the killer app. They think people whose vision is perfect are going to want that, and
Nah.
that'll be enough to kind of supersede that desire to not wear glasses. I'm a little skeptical of it. But at the same time, I don't think that any of these companies are thinking that this will replace phones, that this is just going to be something that they have all the time. I think
But
it's
aren't they? Like, I feel like sometimes that's kind of what, like, I agree with you, but I feel like we're getting the messaging sometimes where, like, you're going to have one device. It's going to be, a pin or a pendant or a watch or glasses, and you're never going to need your phone anymore, and everything's going to be voice based, and and I'm like, no.
I don't think there's consensus with that.
Right.
So what I think is, if you have a bag, do you just put your phone in it? Most people know. Like there's some segmentation in the sense that some people want everything on their phone. They don't want to carry a Kindle. They don't want to carry a phone. They don't want to carry headphones on top of it. They just want one device that's going to do it all. But you have very many people who don't think that way. You have very many people who are like, I want a phone, but I also want a tablet, and I also want a Kindle on top of that because I use these devices for specific things in different ways.
Right.
So I don't think that the Kindle is going to go away just because you can have a Kindle app on your phone, right? Yeah. So in the same sense, I think you'll have some people who are very into the glasses form factor because of all, well, you know what? They're going to wear glasses anyway.
Right.
And that's going to give them an extra layer where maybe they choose glasses over a watch because it's something that they already wear and it's a consolidation for them. What I think you're seeing right now is nobody really knows what the next era is going to look like. So we're just getting a lot of, I call it the spaghetti era.
Yeah,
I think we're in the spaghetti era where everything is just throwing things at the wall and seeing what sticks with people. It's kind of exciting in the sense that it's one of those times where you see a lot of creativity and you see a lot of different approaches, kind of like the early era of smartphones. Because right now, I think you could make the argument that everyone has kind of decided what the main form factor is, and we're not really experimenting. You remember the Sidekicks and the Blackberries, and back when we thought modular phones were going to be a thing, and people were just experimenting, and now we've kind of just decided. And the most experimentation that we get in phones is kind of foldables, right?
Or thin phones, which are the new thing, or thin
phones,
which are going to be standard
we're old
in 5
and
years.
are new.
I know.
It's like we're not really iterating creatively in terms of phones anymore, and that experimentation isn't even on smartwatches so much anymore. Because
well, I was going to say, I feel like you're right. You touched on the smartwatch. Let me just add quickly that I've been wearing smartwatch because I worked at Pebble. I was, and I've been wearing them since then. Before that, I didn't wear a watch at all. And I really thought that eventually we would get to a point where I can get relatively productive with voice and a small display on my wrist, especially since smartwatches eventually gain cellular connectivity. But that's not the case. I'm still more productive on my phone. And it's also the case that I still have a laptop somewhere because I'm more productive on that for some things, right? So I feel like wearables are going to fill certain niches that some people want, but I still don't think, I think the phone is not going to go away anytime soon. Like it's just such a Swiss Army knife.
No, and this is in the same way that the laptop didn't go away because sometimes you just need the laptop
or a tablet.
I don't think it's subtractive. In other words, I think it's just additive. It's just going to get to a point where I'm gonna quote what Joni Ive and Sam Altman were saying, where they thought,
segue.
Where they think that their new mystery, does it exist? Is it actually ever going to come out? That their AI hardware thing, they're not thinking of it as a secondary device that replaces your phone. They think it's tertiary in the sense that you're still going to have your laptop, you're still going to have your phone. This is just an extra on top of that, which, I think there's some consumer fatigue where it's just like, another freaking device that I have to get. But
and charge.
Some people are just going to be like, nah, that's not me. And then some people are going to glom onto it. It's just whether or not it's a killer app for you. Like, let's be real, smartwatches did not take off until Apple said this could save your life. This is about health. And then people were like, aha, that's why I want this. This is a device that is worth having because it's going to save my life in that instance. Like, the emergency fall detection for your elderly relatives, or AFib notifications. It's just, so there's like this concept that having those kinds of health wearables, you have them because it'll tell you when you need to go to the hospital or that sort of stuff. That's really what got major adoption going, not the mini computer on your wrist, not that productivity.
I would also argue that Apple's ecosystem made that happen, because if you look, right, like I still see a lot of people out there with no smartwatches or regular watches. I would say it's 50-50 right now when I look out in the streets. And if they are wearing a smartwatch, 90% of the time it's an Apple Watch, and that's in the West, because obviously in other parts of the world, we have what I like to call fitness bands on steroid watches, right? Like they're just 2-week battery life. They're don't have apps, but they do all the step tracking and all the, the health stuff. I think you're right, though, that a lot of people that are wearing Apple Watches right now are not wearing them because of notifications, because of the fact that they can listen to music while they're running without their phone, the fact that they can even track their sleep. They're wearing them because what if something happens to me, right? And that kudos to Apple for the marketing there. But I think you're right. I think that is the killer app for smartwatches. And when I started at Pebble, that's not what I thought at all. I thought like the killer app for smartwatches is going to be notifications.
Yeah,
and sorting
for some
through
people
notifications. And for me, some people it is. That's why I wear one, right?
I think it's why a lot of people wear one. It's just not necessarily primary. That's not the main reason why they wear one. Most people, when they ask me about what smartwatch to wear, a lot of times it's because they want to get their health in they've come to a point. I've had a lot of friends go, I'm having a midlife crisis. I've just gained a certain amount of pounds. What smartwatch do I buy? And then we have to have a very long talk about what their goals are and how to do this sustainably and how to be smart about it. Because I have a lot of thoughts about that aspect of fitness tracking. It can be, and there's been a couple of articles about this lately with relation to the Oura Ring and some other stuff, but just self-quantification fatigue and how to deal with that and how to deal with mental load. Let's talk about that,
because I feel that's like where I'm at right now. I've got this ultra-human, Air ring here, and I like it. It does what I need it to do, but it does all this other stuff that I don't care about. And I feel completely overloaded. And I haven't found a way in the app to kind of simplify. I've managed to turn off most notifications from the app. But like they keep telling me, oh, you can customize the app. And I'm like, doesn't seem like I can. I don't know what you're talking about. I just want sleep tracking, my activity for the day. And yeah, that's basically all I care about. And for that, it does a very good job. But what all this extra info? And obviously the Hoop Band is a good example as well of that, right? Like people obviously love it, and there is a use for it and a need for it if you're an athlete or somebody who really wants to be data driven about your metrics. But do you think that's kind of like a chicken and egg thing where like it came about because people are obsessed, but that data is really not meaningful and they're not really getting anything out of it because they don't really know how to interpret it? Like, do you really think that, like, where do you think things are? Like, obviously this product exists for a reason, and I think some people benefit from it, but I feel like a lot of people just have it for the sake of having it.
So these are like amazing points. I'm going to hit them one by one because I have a lot of thoughts about all of them.
Sorry for bombarding you there.
No. This is like a wonderful conversation, and one that I have a lot of people about my beat. But quantification fatigue is a very real thing. Behavioral change is actually very difficult to do. So part of this narrative is that people want tools to help them make a behavioral change. Unfortunately, neurologically speaking, it's very difficult to change your hardwiring and your programming. Like I really do believe, after all the research I've done and the reading I've done, that we're just a bunch of like habits stacked on top of each other. So that's 90% of your day. You're just running a habit loop.
You're cruising. Yeah.
You're not really making a lot of choices. You're actually just kind of habits going on autopilot. That's like, I really do believe that there's a lot of science out there kind of proving that, or not necessarily proving that, but just showing that there's a lot of evidence of that's just like basically how we work. So to change your programming, it takes an immense amount of energy to overcome that inertia. And so a lot of people are looking for these digital tools to help them. The problem is that we overload them with data. We have this idea that, you know, a lot of self-optimizing like circles or like self-help circles will be like, you can't change what you can't measure. And so that's kind of where this self-quantification impulse comes from. But the thing that I say in all of my reviews time and time again for almost a decade now is data without context is kind of meaningless.
Right.
And so that's why you see a lot of these fitness trackers, health trackers come up with these cockamamie scores, right? Like your sleep score, your fitness score, your whatever score, so that you can take a bunch of different metrics and kind of make sense. Like the daily readiness score is one that's popped up in the last few years of just how rested and ready to take on some sort of new fitness regime are you? What is your readiness score? What is this and that score? And a lot of it is like helpful if you're a beginner. But if you are someone who's been in it for a long time, it's not that necessary because you should have learned how to listen to your body. And in that sense, sometimes these scores divorce you from actually knowing your own body. And it's like, I'm going to say, to be a full-time wearables reviewer, you actually need a really strong sense of self and mental fortitude, because you can easily fall into paranoia. You can easily fall into obsessive qualities. And I've developed a lot of mechanisms over the years in tandem with my therapist to make sure that I'm using these as tools and the tools are not using me.
Smart.
It's very difficult. It's very difficult to do because, you know, I really empathize with every once in a while, like these cycle of articles come out of people just going like, my Oura Ring gave me an obsessive quality and I started really just not being able to sleep well because I was worried about what score that the Oura Ring was going to give me. And of course, there are people out there who are going to be like, that's silly. Like, you guys need to touch grass. And yes, absolutely. That's true.
But that's easy to say. Like,
it's very easy to say.
People get in this kind of like, you know, endless loop in their heads and they get stuck, you know?
Or they get obsessed with streaks. So to your larger point, you really don't need all of these things, but people seek them because making change is hard. Making a positive lifestyle change is hard, and you want some data, some quantifiable proof that you're moving in the right direction. Yes, tracking these things can help you make those big lifestyle changes more easily. It can help motivate you because you'll see that you're making progress, and that's great. But you can go overboard, and most people do go overboard.
I think so. And I think the marketing too.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like they're wanting you to go overboard, so you are addicted to the product and continue buying subscriptions or whatever. There's some of that going on. But look, I have to give Ultrahuman some credit for the fact that they at least try to explain to you what they're doing. That I think is much better than, say, you know, some of the other wearables. And then Samsung does the same. Samsung actually tries to explain to you what they're doing, which I think is really cool. That being said, like, you know, let's talk about caffeine, because like, how can you tell me when to drink caffeine? I mean, I get it, but like, obviously you don't want to drink caffeine too close to sleeping time because it's going to affect your sleep. Even those of us who drink a lot of coffee, you know, I know that when I have a coffee late in the evening, I can still sleep just fine, but is my sleep quality as good? Probably not. I'm aware of that, but I don't really want someone to tell me when to drink coffee and not to drink coffee. There is some life's little pleasures that you just want to have, you know?
Yeah, it's all about finding that balance because that is a tool that may not work for you, but is useful to someone who has really unhealthy caffeine consumption and is not
Or
necessarily
super
aware
sensitive to it.
or
Yeah.
I'm super sensitive to caffeine. So I know that I can only have like, I mean, I don't know if you can see but this is my giant iced coffee that I had today because I was super exhausted from I'm on my union's bargaining committee. We're getting down to the wire. So I'm
Oh
spending
boy.
very late nights negotiating contracts. And so I'm finding it
Congrats
really
on the
hard.
union, by the way. That's awesome.
Oh yeah, yeah, it's great. We want a fair contract. Hopefully, we'll get that next week. But it does mean that my routines and my schedules are been very disrupted in the last couple of months, and it's been very hard for me actually to maintain a degree of consistency. In that case, having these devices, it's been very interesting to see how this um unusual level of stress is what I would say has been impacting my sleep, how it's been impacting my metrics, because I have a very, very, very long baseline data set, almost 10 years of
Oh wow.
quantified data. So it is interesting to see what my stress levels have been looking like in this period of prolonged elevated stress. That's interesting for me. But that's the thing about wearables is that they're most useful in the sense that you will understand what your individual baseline is. And then when you're in periods where your baseline is absolutely out of whack, you can have some quantifiable data there to see what that looks like. So yeah, in that sense, it's really good to have some sort of indication of when you should or should not be drinking coffee. But there's going to be a lot of people who are like, I mean, common sense is just to listen to your body. And they're right. They're not wrong. They're absolutely right. You should know what your body is telling you. You should have that relationship with your body to be able to understand those
I just
signals.
feel like as somebody who's lived a big chunk of my life in the Northwest and still part-time lives in Vancouver, Canada. And, Allison can relate in Seattle. We just love our coffee. It's just don't tell us when to drink it. Like there is a hard line here. That's the only way we can survive with all this rain. So, but it's interesting because I feel like you bring up something really valid. I like to track my sleep, not just because it's just fascinating to me. Like I don't necessarily take action on it, but I like to look at like, how like quantitatively, like, light sleep, deep sleep, REM sleep,
Mhm.
awake, and kind of get a feel for it. And so now I'm wearing two devices. I usually wear two devices, a ring and a watch, so they complement each other. And it's interesting to compare which devices get you what data and how they match or don't match. And then, what I feel is a good chunk of the time, how I feel listening to my body, because I'm older and I've learned to listen to my body over the years, doesn't match at all what it tells me. Like it tells me, oh, you're ready. And I'm like, nope, I am not ready. Or
Mhm.
sometimes it's like, you're slumpy today. And I'm like, I don't know. I feel pretty damn great. What are you talking about? And so, obviously I expect that variability, it's not an exact thing just yet, but it's really interesting that, I think if you're out there listening to the show and you have wearables, just remember to listen to your body first, right?
Yeah,
I think that's the
because
key here.
there's also sometimes I've had them tell me that I'm very stressed and I'm actually not.
Yeah.
Or, like, tell me that I'm, like, super raring to go, like you said, and I'm like,
Nope.
actually, no, I am really just not feeling it because of XYZ." It's gotten better over the years. I think the stress tracking has gotten a little bit more sophisticated, but it's still, like, the difference between mental stress and physiological stress is a big one. Like, you could be, like I'll just use an example of when my parents died. There would be like periods of time where they're like, "You're raring to go." And I'm like, actually, I'm crying my eyes out because I
Mhm.
really just feel like shit. So you will know yourself best. What these tools do is just kind of give you some feedback. You just have to really be in a mentally strong space to use them effectively over
Yeah.
time because even the strongest person mentally, you are going to get obsessive over your data. You are going to start worrying, oh, this is this. Does this mean I'm sick? Does this mean. No, like you have to take everything with a very heavy grain of salt and you have to really just trust that you know yourself, which is, it sounds obvious, but in practice is actually quite difficult. And there are periods of time where I find myself getting way too swayed by the data and feeling not great about myself. And when those times happen, I will actually take a extended, like, usually these days, 2 to 3 day break from all of my wearables.
Good.
But sometimes I've gone as long as a week just because you need to reset. You need to really stay present. And like, it's going to sound woo woo, but you can get obsessed with streaks. You can get, like, I know people who have 1,000 day long streaks, and I'm like, yeah, but are you going to be okay if you break it? And
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
no, they're just like, oh, I got to do this. I got to have the streak. And I was like, the streak controls you
Yeah.
at that point. So I'm at a point where I purposefully break streaks once I hit if I hit 100-day streak, I'm going to break it on
Nice.
purpose, because you have to prove to yourself that the streak is not why you do the thing.
Right.
It's a tool. You have to be in control of the tool. The tool cannot be in control of you.
Yeah. And I think as another thing is, as women, there's so much, out there, expectations on how we should be, what our bodies should be like, that I that's another thing that you don't want this technology to reinforce these stereotypes and force us to do the things we don't want to do or shouldn't do.
Yeah. Okay.
And that's
Samsung,
another,
I have a bone to pick with Samsung about that.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Yeah. Last year with the Galaxy Watch 7 and the Ultra, they introduced some AI tools into Samsung Health. And there were just like times where it's like, yeah, maybe you should diet. And I was like, excuse you?
No,
Like,
I didn't see
no.
that. It didn't happen to me yet.
I think it was with the advanced ages metric, which is
the
like
ages.
supposedly like it's supposedly measuring how things are metabolized in your body. Like when I talked to Samsung, they're like, yeah, we don't know how people are going to use this. We're just going to try and see. And I was like,
yeah, that
and
was unnecessary.
It was unnecessary. And also like the AI insights that I was getting was at times contradictory. They would be like, you did great with your sleep. And then same day, it'd be like, you are doing awful with your sleep consistency. And it's like, well,
what is it?
What is it then? Like, so, a lot of these companies are trying to integrate AI chatbots into health to interpret your data, because that is the biggest challenge, is how do I interpret this data in a way that keeps me engaged, keeps me on track, helps me stay consistent, but is not negatively affecting my mental capacity to pursue whatever health goals I have. It's a very fine balance. I don't think a lot of people have gotten it right.
I agree.
In many ways, I think a lot of people give up on these features and these devices because at the end of the day, behavioral change is extremely difficult. Like it is very hard to do, and it is very hard to do sustainably, because you set these goals, you set these scores, and all of a sudden it feels like you're in school. You feel like you're failing, right? You feel like you failed a test, and then, oh, that doesn't make me feel good. Let me just quit. But that's the opposite of like what it was supposed to do. So this is a very long-winded way of saying, like, everyone should be very impressed at my job and tell me like, wow, V, you're so great, because the amount of mental
I am impressed
strength that it takes to do this job year in, year out, for almost a decade at this point. I've had a lot of mental breakdowns that I've managed privately on my own, and I don't need claps for it. I'm just mostly saying that, like, I think companies take for granted the average person and how life can just throw roadblocks your way, and they need to build more empathy into the design.
I mean, there's a
products.
strong parallel between what you're talking about and what social media has done to us, right?
Yes.
Like,
yes, it's very similar.
It's very similar.
There's like gamification and competition built into these devices to be motivating, but it actually demotivates a lot of people as well. So I've been very pleased to see that since Aura came out, and since there has been this trend of focusing on rest and recovery, that we've seen like the ability to pause streaks, to be a lot more kind with people, and just acknowledging that life will throw like curveballs your way, and
it's okay. It's okay to take a break.
And it's okay. It's very okay to take a break. You can get back on the horse. So I've been very pleased to see companies just kind of acknowledge that in the last year or two. I hope more do. But yeah, that's just my way of saying that your mental health is a big component of your overall health. And it's something with wearables that I don't think companies are always fine-tuned to the
100%.
right degree.
Yeah, I had actually an experience with Ultrahuman that I thought was really good recently. It kind of told me my immune system might be a little down, and I was like, aha, that is correct. The way I know is because I have a lot of piercings, and my piercings get cranky when I'm either sick or tired or emotionally stressed. And it was right. I mean, I knew that there was something going on there. So, I boosted my immune system a little bit. I didn't know what it was. It wasn't emotional. I figured maybe, I went to a conference, maybe my body was fighting something. And so, yeah, sometimes the stuff is pretty interesting. And, I don't think we should dismiss that. But at the same time, you're in charge is what the takeaway is, right? And you should be. Quickly, could we talk about what you think the AI device from OpenAI and Johnny?
Oh, yeah, of course.
I think pendant right now is what I'm kind of going with. But where are you at with that?
I think it's going to be something similar to what we've seen the AI wearables like Plod Note, the Plod Note pin. I think a pendant is probably a good guess. I think it's something that's going to be modular because they mentioned that they would love it to be something that you display on your desk, but then can also slip into your pocket. So I kind of went through all the types of AI wearables that I've seen, what's out there right now, and what they were saying. I think it's going to be very close to the Plod Note pin, where you could wear it as a necklace, could also be a pin that you put on your lapel, or it could just be something that you just put on your desk. That's screenless and that kind of has a relationship with your phone. It's going to be some sort of always listening device in that sense. Whether it's going to be something that's like a transcription type memory AI device like the Bee wearable, I don't fully think it's going to be that. I think it's going to be something that lets you interact with it and kind of just gives you a little bit of a daily assistant that's a listening device. Something in that vein. There might be a camera. Mainly because if they want it to be multimodal, there's going to need to be a camera.
I think you're right. Yeah, that seems like logical to me too.
So like if we just look at the components of what wearables are, what they've said that they're looking to create, I think you get some sort of modular device. Could be a wearable, doesn't have to be. Has some sort of camera, has a microphone, has a speaker probably so that you can interact with it. Will most likely be connected to your phone so that you could look at it more concretely in terms of like queries or whatnot. It is, I think, primarily just meant to be a hardware manifestation of an AI assistant. So my guess is something very close to the Plod Note pin. I just think that's what makes most sense with a camera attached to it because, multimodal AI in the sense that, you want the AI to be able to interact with the world around you. I think that's probably what we're looking at. I don't think it's going to be the humane AI pin in the sense that
I think people have learned their lesson there.
Yeah. Also, that had just the weird green laser display, which I just don't think worked. We're just not technologically. It was cool, but we're just not at the technological point where that is gonna make sense. Like maybe in the future, but right now the practicalities of where the technology is at, that was not feasible.
For sure.
So,
yeah. So Nothing Headphone 1. It's been announced coming July 1st. What's your thoughts on that? Because I'm my big part of my wearable experience is earbuds and headphones. I know they're not necessarily smart. There are some devices out there that have AI built in, but I'm not, I'm a big fan of that. And it's definitely the wearables besides smartwatches that I've tested the most. How do you feel about Nothing doing this? I think I'm personally very excited because their earbuds have been really great and in every way. So what are your thoughts?
I'm curious because they have kind of set themselves apart with design. So I am curious to see what they're going to look like. As far as over-ear headphones go, I feel like most people I know are either firmly in one of three camps. They either love the Sony XM1000, whatever the number is of the year.
Yep.
And they're just like super into whatever Sony has to have there. And then there's the people in the Bose camp who are just super
obsessed with Bose.
And those two camps generally are very much into the noise canceling of it all, and they have their opinions about the sound profiles of those two devices. And then there's the AirPods Max crowd, which they're an interesting crowd. I feel like they're more into the status of it all. Not to say that they're not to say that they're not good at noise canceling. They are.
They sound good too.
Yeah. They sound great, but they're very much a look at me, I have AirPods Max on my head crowd. Some of those people are very much that. I actually don't like them very much. I like to tease
them and ask them if they have the lightning connector or this USB-C connector when I see them.
I mean, I love the colors. I kind of love the way they look, but in terms of me actually wearing them, I find them very uncomfortable.
They're heavy.
So they're too heavy. I can't rock with that.
I'm not Camp Sony, just so you know.
I'm also Camp Sony. I find them to be the most lightweight. The only thing I don't like about the Sonys is the feature where they pause.
You can turn it off in the app. That's the problem.
You can turn it off, but
it comes back. It comes back. It
comes back. Yeah. I always forget how to turn it off in the moment because I'm panicked, and that just like escapes my brain.
Yep.
So I am Team Sony, but at the same time, I really wish they would quit with that particular feature. Like, stop trying to make it happen. It's not happening. Let me decide when I do that. Stop trying to make those decisions for me. That's how I feel about those. But to your point, it is interesting to see nothing throw its hat into the ring. I feel like there's more variability with earbuds, but it'll be interesting because it's been so ossified, I feel like, in the over-ear market. So,
well, they have in their earbuds, if you have the software installed for your phone, they have an OpenAI integration. So it'd be interesting to see how that evolves while OpenAI is doing their own thing, right?
That was actually my other guess for what it could have been before because, they announced the thing and there weren't so many details or leaks just yet. In that very short 24-hour window, I was like, oh, they're going to do headphones. That was my original thought, because I was like, I think it's going to be something a little different, and headphones kind of make sense for AI because everything is so voice integrated. So initially I thought it was going to be a pair of headphones, and then more details came out. So then I changed my prediction, but yeah.
Yeah, no, I think audio devices are definitely a good way to get into an AI assistant type setting without a display, right? And I think we're going to see, we're going to see more of that with earbuds going forward. I think headphones are a bit of an outlier. I mostly wear mine when I travel, like on planes, and when I really need to cancel out noise in a noisy environment, like a conference press room or something. But like at home, I wear wired, better quality headphones, no latency when I'm editing audio and stuff. And then when I'm on the go walking, it's earbuds for me all the way, right? Noise canceling. I'm not a big fan of the open ones. I think they're great, but it's not my thing. Let's switch to some news items and some things that happened this week. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this OnePlus tablet that came out. I reviewed it for Hot Hardware. So, it's basically your iPad Air competitor. It has a keyboard and a pen, and it's very lovely. I don't think you can see it very well.
I can see it. Yeah.
Anyway, it's fine. It's no, don't get me wrong. It's an Android tablet. That's why I say it's fine, because it's flagship, right? It's flagship specs for $699. It's better specs than the Galaxy Tab, which is kind of like the mother of all Android tablets. It's better than specs-wise than an iPad of any kind. Well, maybe not the Pro, because the Pro does have that crazy dual OLED display and stuff. But for the price, $699, it's a really solid tablet, Snapdragon 8 Elite. all that. Cameras are meh, but it's a tablet. Who cares, right? Like, it's not the end of the world. The keyboard's not backlit. That was one of the things, but not all tablets have backlit keyboards. So that's kind of my general review on this. It's just like, but my question to you is, like, why buy an Android tablet? Like, if you're going to consume content on this, you can do that on a $200 Android tablet that doesn't have flagship specs. It can have a good display, but that's basically it. If you're going to play games, I can kind of maybe see the point, because an 8 Elite's going to kick butt. But like, there are no great Android tablet apps out there like there's on iPad, like for creativity, like doodling and music and stuff. So, where do you sit on that?
Android tablets are just it feels like a forgotten stepchild in the gadget world, somewhat, just because, the average person, they're not buying Android tablets for their kids. They're buying iPads, right? Oh,
yeah.
Look at that. Look at that pencil.
The Stylo 2, it's called. It's very Apple-like, as you can see here.
It is very Apple-like. I mean, that whole design feels a bit iPad-like.
It's very thin. It's 5.9 millimeters, so it's really quite thin. You can kind of see it there in the video. Mm-hmm. It's a little thicker when you put this back kickstand panel on. And of course, the keyboard adds thickness. The keyboard's nice. Got a trackpad and everything.
I have always been like, should I try and use an iPad instead of a laptop? And it just never can. And I don't mean just iPads, but like any tablet instead of a laptop. And it's never enough. Unlike, you can talk about iPad OS and Mac OS. Why won't they just let you use Mac OS on an iPad? Great question. But I think
that's an eternal question.
That's an eternal question. But I think it just comes down to the fact that it's such an in-between device category, because phones are infinitely more portable and you can do so much on a phone.
You can get more and more productive, I feel, on phones, especially as the screens have gotten bigger. Folding phones have solved the problem for some people, etc. Yeah.
Yeah. So like, phones are just so much more versatile, so much more portable. Laptops, however, they just have all the power that you need.
That's
when you
what
need
I
to
feel.
do like
like
tasks.
If I want to get serious, I pull out my MacBook. I mean, there's no doubt about it.
Yeah. So like, that just leaves tablets as media consumption devices, right?
Yeah.
So in that case, it's really hard to beat the iPad, just because there's a reason why we call them iPad kids, right? Like, we don't call them tablet kids, we call them iPad kids, because
that's a good point.
All the little games are on there for them. It's just easy to put videos on there. And of course, I've seen some kids with like Fire tablets or just Android tablets, but it's just, for some whatever reason, people have culturally glommed onto the iPad for iPad kids. And then, I don't know if you've ever seen this, but whenever you see like a grandparent or an elderly person in one of those tour groups, they've just got their iPads as their cameras. And my mom was like that when she was alive. She just had her iPad, and it was always at a Dutch
Watch
angle.
out, I'm taking a photo.
Yeah, that was my mom all the time. And it was just because it was a big screen. It was a big screen for her to consume media on, because the phone was too small for her eyes. So, I just feel like this category is the stepchild of all gadgets, because it's so in between. And the people that it really appeals to are children and the elderly. So
yep. I think you're right.
They keep trying to sell these as productivity devices for the rest of us. And I know a handful of people who do use it. It's just, I don't think I agree. I have to say, it's the device that I'm most like, I should really just use my tablet. And I have Pixel tablets, and I have iPads at home. And I'm always just like, I should just use these. And then I go to pick them up, and it's been so long since I've used my iPad, it's always out of battery.
Or you need to software update, or you need to log back into all your apps. Yeah, because you've been logged out. Yeah, I know.
I've gotten to the point where I have a pop socket on the back of my phone, so I can just use that to prop it up as my media consumption device when I'm doing other things.
Yep.
So unless you're an artist, because
that's one point. And then you buy an iPad, right? Because
and then you buy an iPad.
Yeah.
because there's nothing.
So
I just feel like Android is. It's not that they're bad devices. I think my Pixel tablets are great.
This is fantastic. I think it spec wise, it's great. It's as good as a Galaxy Tab S10 Ultra, and it costs like $400 less. And it's super fast, and the display is gorgeous, and like there's nothing wrong with it, but I'm questioning why it exists. Like it's 13 inches too. Like for me, 11 is kind of a sweet spot for tablets because
11
it's
is
smaller than most
tablets.
laptops. So if you add the keyboard that maybe I can write somewhere at the coffee shop and not carry a laptop that's as heavy and big, because even my MacBook Air is 13 inches. But like, as you said,
it just feels
content consumption, buy a $200 Android tablet. As long as the display is good, that's all you need for Netflix, right? And then if you want to be productive on, like, I know that Harry McCracken likes to use his iPad to write. He almost uses it exclusively to write all his stories for Fast Company. That's a valid thing. If it works for you. For me, it's a little too limiting.
I can't.
Yeah. But at the same time, if you're an artist and you're a visual artist and you draw or a musician and you want to compose and play music, having that tactility of those controls on the screen is going to matter. And then you get an iPad Pro. At that point, you go all out. You spend $1,500 and you go nuts, right? And you don't have it in a MacBook Air or whatever. I just don't see. I don't see it. Like. But I think it's good. It's a good product. Like I just, meh.
Yeah, it is such a confusing category because it's just so niche, and depending on your niche, you're going to go for certain things. So it's just the most befuddling category to me because I want it. I want to like it, but whenever I try and fit it into my personal life, it just sits there uncharged.
Exactly. And I feel that so many people buy tablets, but they never use them. Or, they really use them. It's like, it's one or the other. It's like either sitting there doing nothing and they have a MacBook or a laptop or something and their phone, or it's like they only have a phone and a tablet and they actually use their tablet all the time because they don't really do work on it. Maybe they write at most, and then most of the time they're just watching Netflix or YouTube or whatever.
Yeah. It's really funny because it's great for media consumption, but for all of my media consumption, it's actually the worst possible option, which is so funny to me because if I watch videos in bed, I actually don't like using a tablet because I fall asleep and then it hits me in the face.
Oh, yeah.
And that's the huge problem.
I use it when I'm in the bathtub. That's my tablet use case for consumption. I just put it up on a stool and I'm not worried about like my laptop, which is my day-to-day productivity device, getting wet or something. If the tablet, I don't hold it. It's sitting on the thing. But if somehow I were to get wet or whatever, it's not a big deal. And it has a kickstand built in, which is really nice. I mean, not built in this case, but most tablets have some kind of kickstand or whatever. Yeah, so there you go. Another device came out this week is this Moto Edge, quote unquote flagship. It's kind of not really, but it's very nice. And we saw it at the Razer event. You were there. Mm-hmm. So I've been playing with this for a few days. There's nothing wrong at all with this product. It's solid. It's a solid phone. The camera's actually decent. It's slim. It's thin. The
color's nice.
That's a good color. And
the beautiful green.
3 cameras on the back. It's got a proper telephoto and everything. But here's the thing. It's $550 and it only has like a mid-range chip on it. I think it's like I want to say a Dimensity of some kind, 7300 or something. And I'm like, you're not making a flagship. The Edge used to be your flagship. What happened there? And then I'm thinking to myself, you get the Razers, even the mid-range Razer, even the base Razer has the same specs. So why not buy that for just $100 more or something? Like,
it feels like that phone they have it just to have it because they think they should have it. And I think that's the wrong choice because if you think about Motorola, what their strengths are, first of all, like, I think they really shouldn't bother quite as much with the bar phones just because when I think of them, I think of the Razer and I think of them doing interesting things in foldables. And that's kind of what sets them apart.
Right.
From the Samsung. Samsung has just been, I've heard Allison say this so many times at the Verge, but they're like coasting. They came out real strong with the foldables.
They really are coasting.
They are just so coasting at this point.
Yep.
And, I think Motorola is at least doing some interesting stuff with their foldables.
I love their stuff. Yeah.
So why not just lean into that. Like, is anyone really going, yeah, Motorola, I want their mid-range bar phone? Because I feel like if you want a slab phone, you're just going to go with the Samsung and maybe a Pixel if you're more interested in kind of, I think the Pixel phones are great, but
me too. That's my main phone.
Yeah, but I just think in like the range of options that are there, are we really looking to Motorola for the slab and the bar phone? I don't really think so. So I just don't think they're playing to their strengths there, and that they should just go. Like, I saw Allison just fall in love in real time with the wood.
The wood.
Oh
yeah, me too.
On the Motorola foldables, and
absolutely.
I wonder if you felt this way too at the Motorola event, but they were leaning so hard into their partnerships and so hard into like the design language, because they were like, they were just going like, we really care about design. We really care about design and Pantone and color. And that was very true. This does have
Pantone color, actually, and Pantone certification on the camera, too.
I love that for them. But at the same time, it was just very much like, we're setting ourselves apart because we know that it's not that different. So we really have to talk up the design language for you to give a crap.
Yeah.
And I kind of was like, that's not going to be enough for most people. It's a beautiful color. It's a beautiful color. Don't get me wrong. But
by the way, I was wrong. It's Dimensity 7400, but I mean, it's a mid-range chip, and it has beautiful. This is a 1020p display, so it's actually not 1080p. It's actually higher as OLED. It's bright, as you can see. I'm in direct sunlight, and cameras are good. There's a telephoto, and lots of storage, lots of RAM. It's got an dedicated AI button like the Moto Razrs.
Oh, good lord!
Oh, good lord! I know, but I mean, it's a plastic frame. That's one thing I could say. But here's the thing: for $550, you can do better. You can get a Pixel 9a. You can get, there's so many other phones. Nothing Phone 3a Pro. Much better phone. But here's the thing: this thing also is so close in terms of spec to the Moto G stylus, which has a stylus and costs like $100 less. Like, you're getting very little. I think you get a telephoto that you don't have on the stylus. But other than that, it's the same phone with the same industrial design. And you get a stylus. At least you have something unique and different. And that makes sense. The phone exists because it's different. But here, it's just a mid-range. And I would have preferred them making just like going all out and just make a 799 flagship with like an 8 Elite in there and just go nuts and show that, Moto still exists. We make bar phones. They're flagship worthy. They compete with Pixel and Samsung S25 and all that. But no.
Yeah, I don't think. I think they were just not going for it in a weird way.
I think they're maybe afraid to steal the show from the Razr, and I kind of get that.
I get that, but if that's the case, then just go all in on the Razr. That's
right.
My
then
thought.
Forget having this phone altogether. Stop at the Moto G series, right? Yeah.
Yeah. It feels like maybe they were a bit trying to hedge, but I kind of
trying to hedge the edge.
They were hedging the edge. They were not listening to
the show right there.
They were not listening to the Ron Swanson school of thought, where you don't half-ass two things, you whole-ass one thing.
That's correct. You whole-ass one thing.
I see that happen a lot with gadget companies.
I think that's the problem.
They have to do everything.
Yep.
And
Samsung
really
is a poster child for that.
Yeah. Oh God, don't get me started on Samsung. But even Apple to an extent, where I feel like it's the Tim Cookification of Apple, because back in the Jobs era, they were very much, and I understood why people didn't like it.
Mm-hmm.
I understood why people didn't like it, because it felt a little arrogant for them to be like, no, you only want one product, and we're going to tell you what that one product is. That there's an arrogance to that I think people rightfully bristled at. But on the flip side, it offered simplicity. You didn't have to have a lot of thought. There wasn't a lot of fragmentation. It was very simple to kind of figure out what you want. And to bring it to iPads, even there's like 4,000 iPads now.
Yeah.
And like, which one do
you get? To
your
point, you now have to decide between the Watch Ultra in black and the Watch Ultra in silver, which I know you wrote an entire story about, which is one of my favorites that you've ever written, because it's just like,
I just wanted to do a shit post.
F to you at them for that. It was great. It was lovely.
Yeah, I mean, I'm wearing the black one right now, and I do say that I love it. It's very sleek. It's very cool. I love it. But at the same time, I very much was just like, oh my God, you just made it black. Because
yes, because we're Apple, and that's what we do.
That's all you had for it, because there was no Ultra 3. And you know what? That's fine. A lot of people wanted it in black. I had so many people being like, oh, should I get it in black? I already have the Silver Ultra. And I had to be like,
I mean, if you're questioning that, if you're asking that question, you have the money to get the black, then don't ask that
there's
question.
No harm. Go for it.
If you're asking that question, that means you actually have the money. If you're not asking that question, then you probably are going to stick with your Ultra 1 or Ultra 2.
There was absolutely no reason to get the black Ultra. There's none, except that it looks cool. That's the only reason to get it. And if you have the money, go for it. Just think a little bit about e-waste and what you're doing with that money. But like if it's causing minimal harm, I'm not going to blame you. It does look very cool. I can't deny that. But at the same time, I think with that piece, what I was trying to do is kind of poke fun at the ridiculousness of it.
Oh, you did. It was great. I loved it.
So, yeah. I mean, like, what are you going to write? What are you going to write other than it's black? That's it. That's all I can write about it. It's black. And how do we feel about the blackness of it? And it was
awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. A few more items to wrap things up. There's a OnePlus 13S that was announced alongside the OnePlus Pad 3 this week. We knew that was coming because it's identical to the OnePlus 13T that was launched in China. What's important to know here, and I'll leave a link to GSM Arena's coverage on that, is it is the compact flagship phone. Compact being 6.3 inches. Think iPhone 16. Think Pixel 9 Pro regular. Think Xiaomi 15 regular. So not tiny, but it's smaller-ish than the OnePlus 13 that we all know and love, and pretty similar in specs and performance, which is cool. Unfortunately, it's not coming North America. It's India only right now, and some other markets are getting it. So the T is China only, and it's identical. So there it is. It exists. I want to let you know it's out now. So if you're really jonesing for a OnePlus phone that's smaller but has all the goodness of the 13, go import it. It should be totally great in the US if you're on T-Mobile or AT&T. Let's see what else we got here. Oh, Nintendo Switch is now on sale. This is just a PSA. I'm sure those of you listening to this podcast are tech savvy and early adopters, and if you're into the Switch, you will already have gotten one. But if you forgot, good luck getting one, but it's out now.
If you somehow forgot that the Switch 2 is out.
Pixel 10 series is supposedly rumored to be coming out on August 20th, and supposedly going to have some kind of gimbal-like stabilization that gives it the same effect as like using one of those DJI, cameras, handheld gimbal thingies. And without I guess a physical gimbal, so that's kind of interesting. What are your thoughts on, you're a Pixel person. You like the Pixels, what I'm saying. I'm definitely a Pixel person. What do you think of that?
Feels a little gimmicky. I'm going to have to see that's one of those things where it's like, cool, let me see how it is in person. Hope it works. Reserve judgment, I guess.
Yeah.
It feels like they're getting to a point where they also have to be like, how are we going to differentiate this year from last year?
Yeah. Well, their initial design can stay the same for another year. I'm very happy with the 9 series the way it is right now.
They were great phones.
That was fantastic. Samsung Galaxy Z Fold 7, Z Flip 7, the folding phones are going to be launching early July in New York City. That's at least the rumor right now. I'm just, again, putting this on your radar for those of you who are paying attention, who care about these launches that are coming. This is going to be a big deal. Hopefully, I'll be there to cover it with you folks. I'm not the biggest fan of Samsung's foldables, but I have a feeling that after years of complacency, we might actually get some progress on these foldables. Do you think that's going to happen?
I don't actually.
Oh, you don't think so, huh?
I'm very much a skeptic, just because I have been suffering through this on the watches for a really long time, where every year I think they're going to do something interesting and then it's more of the same. And then I get really frustrated with that. And then I was really cynical last year because it felt like they were just copying Apple. And I got a lot of heat from Samsung fans for saying that. But come on, look at the Samsung
it's 100%
Ultra.
100% true.
Yeah, it was very disappointing.
It only exists because Apple made it. Like, they didn't innovate here.
No, yeah. It was so disappointing because I get accused of not liking Samsung, but I actually root very hard for Samsung because I would love for there to be parity in the wearable world. And it extends to the phones as well, but I just don't know what it is about Samsung lately. I feel like they've been coasting. I haven't really seen anything from them that felt exciting in a while. So I would love for them to do something different with the foldables this year. But I don't know, the last couple of years, it's just been like, and it's kind of similar to the one from last year.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, you know what brand is doing some cool stuff that we can't get in North America, but it's super cool every time they come out with a new product. We're like, wow, Huawei. And in fact, Huawei made some really great wearables back in the day. I mean, they still do, but it's hard to get them. The Pura series is their camera flagship kind of camera phone thing. And the new one, the 80 series, probably 3 phones, a regular Pro and an Ultra probably, or Pro Plus like they've done in the past, are coming. They're coming on June 11th. Again, PSA for those of you who are in markets that we can buy this phone. And I have tried some of these and the cameras are just wow. I mean, Huawei still hasn't lost the plot despite all the limitations, no access to Google mobile services, no access to the better chip manufacturing processes. They're just kicking butt in their own market.
The Chinese phone market is so much more interesting
than
the American one. It's so stagnant in terms of design and ideas, whereas over there, because the competition is so fierce, they're trying some wackadoodle stuff, and I wish we could have it, but tariffs and trade wars and all of that stuff, so we can't.
So bad.
It's disappointing. It's a little sad. I'm a little jealous that it seems like they're having a lot more fun over there in China with the phones.
For sure. Same with EVs. Like it's just such a plethora of choice that we just don't get choice. And that's my problem, right? Like it's like I have no problems with Apple and Samsung's products. Some of them are great. It's just more like I want also the option. Like OnePlus seems to be the only thing I can buy or Google or Moto that is not the status quo. But in China, there is no status quo. It's like
exactly
you get so much Xiaomi, Oppo, Vivo. You get
very
Huawei, Honor. Yeah,
it's very reflected in the wearable sense too, because also the OnePlus Watch 3, just like, yep. I love it. It's a great watch.
It's great.
I was so pleased when the OnePlus Watch 2 was such a redemption story from the god awful dog shit OnePlus Watch original. That is the worst smartwatch I've ever tested to this date. Fucking Pulitzer Prize winner in fiction for metrics, because nothing it said was at all truthful when I tested it.
It was so broken. It's true.
It was so fucking broken. But the OnePlus Watch 2 and 3 have really been wonderful alternatives to Samsung and Google's Android offerings.
Yeah.
And I think I felt the same way about the phones in terms of like the space that they occupy. But, I do think about the Huawei watches of old. They were great watches.
They were so good. I wore them for many years. The original Android Wear ones I had, I wore that for 2 years. It was amazing.
They were absolutely great watches. I kind of miss having that around. Because now it's just OnePlus or Mobvoi, and fucking Mobvoi has just not. They've had their struggle. They've been strugs to funk for a while. I think they're getting better, but they've been strugs to funk for a bit. I don't know. There's like a lot of kind of sadness that I feel when I see how much innovation is going on in the Chinese smartphone market versus what we've got here. It's a little stagnant. It's a little staid.
Yeah.
What do we have to look forward to this year from the phones that'll be available in the US? They're thinner, I guess. That's the rumor.
Well, that's honestly, I have to say my Galaxy S25 Edge review will be out on Hot Hardware soon. I've already talked about it on the podcast quite extensively. I have to say, like, there's something about feeling that phone in hand and holding it and using it day to day in terms of thickness and lightness or thinness, I should say, that really appealed to me somehow. I don't know. It worked for me.
Maybe.
And I think that my theory is that 5 years from now, all flagships will be that thin and it'll be a normal thing. And it won't won't matter. But for a little interim period, they're going to improve them. I think Samsung, being Samsung, really didn't want to rock the boat and push buttons too much. And they, that's why that battery is not silicon carbon, etc. They're testing the waters. But I think that next year's Edge better like bring it on, because I feel like they could totally replace the S Plus series with that one, like not the base model, but the middle child. And and Apple, I think Apple's just gonna sell it on sexiness alone. Like it doesn't matter what's inside at this point.
I don't know. I feel like Apple's lost its footing a little bit.
Well, with this whole AI thing, for sure.
With the whole AI thing, for sure. But then also just, I don't know. It feels weird. I have to say, like, it feels like it's lost some of its polish a bit, which is a very strange thing to say because I've always had an iPhone as my main daily
is that your
driver.
Main?
That's my main, just because it's simple. All of my family is on. It's really funny because I'm Korean, so all my family in Korea, they are all exclusively on Samsung.
I was going to say,
my family, but all my family here in America, they're on iPhones. So I primarily talk to my family here. So it's iPhone just for simplicity.
Makes sense.
But I also double wield a lot of the time because the wearables watches aren't
we all, right?
we all are. We all are. I think it's just because I'm rebelling against the rest of my family. I generally go with a Pixel when I'm double wielding.
Right on, same here. Yeah,
I very much enjoy those. I very much enjoy those phones versus, not that I dislike the Samsung phones. I just feel like they're so Samsung. If that makes sense.
100%,
it's just so Samsung.
100%. I get it. Absolutely. Well, listen, we should wrap up. Do you want to tell folks where they can find you on the internet? Obviously, you write at The Verge, but everything else, your social media handles you want to share, all that stuff.
Yeah, you can find me on every social media platform at VicMSong. I like to keep it simple. Same handle everywhere. So you can just find me on Instagram, Blue Sky. I don't use Twitter as much, but I pop in every once in a while. Oh, it's X now. I still call it Twitter.
Yeah, same here.
Anyway,
don't worry. We're old. That's
why.
Why.
We're old. It's fine.
And cranky.
It's fine. Old and cranky. Yes, exactly.
So folks, please go read Victoria's stuff on The Verge. It's phenomenal content. I absolutely love your stuff. Thanks for being on the show, of course. Folks, you know where to find me on the internet. I'm at Tankgirl, TNKGRL. Drop all the vowels like the comic book character, Tankgirl. And then you get my handle. And my handle is pretty much the same everywhere. I'm mostly active on Instagram, Threads, and Blue Sky, but I'm on everything else pretty much. So come talk with Victoria and I about this podcast on social if you'd like. And you know that the podcast lives at mobiletechpodcast.com. We're on all the major platforms. So please subscribe if it's your first time here. And you know that your app might let you review or rate the show. So please consider doing that. There's a YouTube channel, youtube.com/mobiletechpodcast with the occasional videos. The last one was on the Razer hands-on. So yeah, if you want some additional content for free, youtube.com. Please like, subscribe, tell your friends, click the bell. You know how YouTube works. But if you want to support me more actively, there is a Patreon, patreon.com/Tankgirl, also spelled TNKGRL. You can get a video version of this podcast in advance, a day in advance every week for $5 a month. So consider joining me on Patreon and getting the video version. Sometimes I like extra content slip in there and stuff. You get to see our faces and devices and stuff, so it's fun. So yeah, patreon.com/TNKGRL. And I want to thank our sponsor, Mint Mobile. So as you know, I'm constantly reviewing multiple phones, and while that's fun, it also means I'm constantly spending a lot of money for wireless service on multiple SIMs. That's where Mint Mobile comes in, and that's who I'm partnering with for today's podcast. If you also want to save money on your wireless service, switch to Mint Mobile. As tech-savvy early adopters, you've probably heard of Mint Mobile before, but let me quickly tell you how awesome their service is. Mint Mobile offers premium wireless for as low as $15 a month, and you don't have to sacrifice any coverage, speed, or data. They're built on the nation's largest 5G network. They keep costs low because they sell direct to you online. They cut out the retail stores and salespeople. Why should you pay more than you have to for access to the same network? In my experience testing phones, Mint Mobile delivers the same data speeds and call quality as the big three for a fraction of the cost. Switching to Mint is super easy. Thanks to their eSIMs, you can sign up and activate immediately right on your phone from the comfort of your home. No more standing around and waiting in line at a big wireless store. You can keep your current device and phone number and easily switch services. And if your phone isn't eSIM compatible, Mint will ship you a new SIM free of charge. All Mint Mobile plans include unlimited nationwide talk and text, lightning fast 5G, and free mobile hotspot. Mint will show you how much data you use each month and recommend plans that save you money. Mint also offers a modern family plan that lets you set up a super affordable family plan with as little as 2 lines. Use my link mintmobile.com/mobiletech to get premium wireless starting for $15 a month. That's mintmobile.com/mobiletech. Stop paying more than you need on your wireless bill and start saving big with Mint Mobile. And Victoria, thanks so much for being my guest. Really appreciate you being on.
Thanks for having me.
It's been a blast. We'll have you on again in the future. And folks, we'll have a show next week. Stay tuned for that. Until then, cheers, everybody.